I'm still at a loss to explain what's going on for you, Lance, unless there's some weird problem on your computer which is blocking one of Zoom's incoming connections. It might be related to your internet connection or something like that. Anyway, you can at least hear us, and we'll be recording. Are you recording now, Graham? Yes, I see that. Now, I'm going to stop video on all the other machines, make sure I don't need that one running probably. So if I start breaking up audio-wise, it's probably because I've got too many computers trying to share my internet connection at once. So I may have to drop some of them off. So if necessary, I can have them join on again manually. What I want to do here is, that's right. Okay, let's get started. So good to see lots of people here tonight. 1, 2, not counting my 4 computers. We've currently got 10 participants, so it's 9 people, not counting me, so that's good. So this is going to be reasonably free form, and I'm basically going to be doing this as a kind of a answering questions and looking at things as needed, talking about anything to do with macOS Big Sur or the M1 Macs in particular, and if people have questions about other recent operating systems, and I'm happy to delve into those as well, or just general questions on upgrading Macs. So it's going to be reasonably free form, but the priority is talking about the new stuff. So I'd prefer to do that. Hopefully everybody knows how to use the chat feature. If you have any questions, I've got it open now so I can hopefully pay attention to it. If anybody does have any written questions, they can put them in the chat section. You can also raise your hand, and I hopefully will see that and can pay attention to questions that are coming up. So would anybody like to get started? Has anybody got a particular point they would like to talk about first? If not, I can just start repeating information I've got about Boot Camp and Big Sur. Right, that's one from Chris. Yep, that popped up on my other screen. So let's start with that. If I go to my MacBook Pro over here, make sure I've got co-host permission on all of them so they can all share the screen. MacBook here. MacBook Pro 16. There's Margaret, she came under after all. And I've got to find the other two. M1 MacBook Air and M1 Mac Mini. Okay, right. I can now share the screen from my other machines. Okay, so Chris's question was about Boot Camp. Now, Boot Camp in Big Sur is not something I have explored specifically. Are you talking, Chris, about specifically Boot Camp on Big Sur for Intel Macs is the first question, just to narrow that down a bit?
Yeah, yep. 2017 iMac. Right,
okay. I've never used Boot Camp on any Mac OS version, so my knowledge of it is just based on what I've read about and what other people have said. I'm not aware of there being any particular issues with Big Sur as far as Boot Camp is concerned, as long as you are talking about an Intel Mac. Now, of course, it won't work on an Apple Silicon Mac, which is a different question, but if we just limit that question to Intel Macs, the only issue I think you might run into is if you're trying to run an older operating system. This is one where I'd be inclined to go and just have a quick look online to see if there's any commentary about it, because I haven't done that myself. Boot Camp not booting in Big Sur using yada, 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 one comment.
I haven't had any issues transferring my Boot Camp when I went from Catalina to Big Sur, but I mean, I had already set it up on Windows 10 on mine.
Yeah.
Can you do it under earlier versions of Windows, or is there a limit?
There's a limit. You are limited to. I mean, you can't go down to Windows 7 if you've got a 2015 or later Mac. If you've got a 2015 or later, you have to be on Windows 10. If you've got, I think it's anything before 2012, which I've got on my iMac, you can't have Windows 10.
2017.
Yeah, so it will only run Windows 10. It'll run any version of Windows 10, but it'll have to run it on that.
Okay, here's just found a support article. I've just sent a link to that. Basically says that you can only install Windows 7 or 8.1 if you've got High Sierra or if you've got Mojave or later, you can only install Windows 10. And there's a link on that page which takes you to which models can run Windows 10 at all on a Mac, which Andrew was just alluding to then. So if you've got basically any 2015 or later model, it can run Windows 10. Yeah, looks like it. This article is, I think, from 2018. No, it's been updated in 2020. So in principle, as long as you've got Windows 10, you should be able to have Boot Camp running on Big Sur.
I've just checked. You can still set it up on Boot Camp on Big Sur as long as you have the Intel Mac. That's fine.
Yep, I'm just having a quick look now. Confirm that the setup assistant is still there. Yep, it is. So I can see that I can't attest to it actually working, but it looks to me like there is a Boot Camp assistant in Big Sur on an Intel Mac. It should work, given that you have a new enough version of Windows. The only issue there is if you're trying to run Windows 7 or 8 or 8.1, there are no drivers available. Basically for recent OS versions, so they won't let you install it. There is, if the reason that you want to run Windows on the Mac is not for anything particularly intensive, then considering a virtual machine option might be a solution instead. Particularly if it's for personal use, VMware Fusion version 12 is available as a free player, and that runs on Catalina and Big Sur, and that can run Windows as long as you're not trying to do anything particularly graphics intensive. If you're trying to run games, it probably won't work for anything complicated. That's the difficulty. Though I've heard that Parallels Desktop does a better job than VMware on average.
Just on the subject of Parallels Desktop, there's currently a promotion by Stack Social on this week. I think it's $42 US for Parallels Desktop and 11 other applications.
That's one that everybody seems to be doing. I've seen it in 3 or 4 places. So it's warning that I think it's a 1-year subscription to Parallels, not a permanent license. So, and then the normal price is about $100 US or something like that. So, but that's possibly an option to at least try it out and see if it works without spending an awful lot of money. Okay.
Yeah, I was not wanting to use Windows terribly lot.
Where's the computer here?
Sorry, I'm just going to have to ask other people who are not talking. Can you please mute? I'll just do a mute all. And I'll allow people to unmute themselves so we don't get interrupted. So if you just unmute yourself as you need to talk again. So Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to install Windows just for a few simple games programs, basically, that I'd like to start up using again, sort of looking at no longer available on the Mac, okay, and so on. So, yeah, I was just looking at a relatively inexpensive way of setting it up. But I have looked at the Parallels, which I've got the earlier version, but they never seem to work terribly well. It wouldn't save games or anything like that, which was a major pain in the neck. So I just want to try out Boot Camp, which at least was free, as it were.
You got my Windows, that's the catch.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to do that if you get Parallels or whatever as well, which actually was my last question. I don't want to, I'm not aiming for a pirated version or anything like that, but how do you get Windows 10, there seems to be different. I've been hunting on the internet at it, and there seem to be sort of different ways, as it were.
You can download it if you're setting up Boot Camp as a new thing. You can. There is a link on the Microsoft site to a free copy of Windows 10.
Oh, wouldn't
Really?
you link to that,
Yeah.
would you?
I
I hadn't heard the word free before when it came to Windows 10.
It was on the Microsoft website, a direct ISO file.
Yes, you
Yep.
can download it, but you can't run it because you need a license key. You have to have a license first.
Yeah.
The normal way of doing it.
License. That's the funny thing. It actually ran without the license, and it's never asked me for the license.
Okay, well, the way I did it was I bought a retail copy of Windows 10 as a. I think I actually bought the version which came on a USB flash drive, but I didn't need to. I could have bought the one which was an electronic download, but I bought it from a retailer who sold it slightly less than Microsoft, and that gave me. I bought Windows 10 Pro because I wanted some of the extra features. I'm just going to try using my headphones here because that's I'm getting a little bit of feedback loop. These don't have a microphone though, so I hope this will work. Okay, so that should cut down feedback from my end at least. Yep, so basically the Windows 10 version that I bought, you can buy either an OEM or a retail version. The OEM or original equipment manufacturer version is only supposed to be used on a new PC you are building from spare parts, basically, or building yourself from scratch. I wasn't not at all clear on whether that was actually allowed to be used in a virtual machine, so I didn't buy that one. I bought the full retail version. The one I bought came with both 32-bit and 64-bit license keys. Do I still have it handy? No, that's not it. I can't see it at first glance. It's not on my shelf, so I'm not sure I put it. It's probably buried somewhere. But basically, it came on a USB flash drive, but you could get a version which just had a piece of paper in it, which had a license key printed on. You got to expose, and once you got that, you have a sort of a 30-character thing to type in. But you can download the actual copy of Windows from Microsoft's website, so that's not a problem. I think you have to sign in with an account with them first, or something like that.
I'd be quite happy to do that. Yeah, it was just getting the key seemed the tricky bit.
Yeah. The place I went to buy mine was a company called Ascent. Actually, if I go and find the right page rather than just giving you the link to the main page. Just find the link. This should be... And there is the home versus pro version. Most people probably don't need the pro version. I wanted it so it was fully compatible with my... Well, this will do. If I give you the search page, you can see all the options then. Right, so there's a link to the search results page on the Ascent website. Ascent is an electronic, sort of an online reseller based in Wellington, who I've used for years to buy various computer bits and pieces. They're quite good to deal with. So on that search page, they've got OEM and non-OEM versions with or without a USB flash drive. The cheapest one listed there is Windows 10 Home 32/64-bit electronic software delivery, which is $210.21.
Thank you. I had not met this place before.
Yeah, I think I'm up to about order number 100 from them. I've been using them for years. For all sorts of things, not just Windows, but like Mac spare parts and memory and printers and other stuff getting delivered to me, hard drive storage, everything like that. Okay.
Just bookmark that. Thank you.
Okay, so it's not me causing feedback. Somebody else will have to mute their microphone while they're not speaking because it's causing feedback. I'm not sure who it is. Okay. All right. So setting aside, well, now that we've finished that question, anybody else have any specific questions relating to Big Sur? Margaret, I see you've got your hand up. You'll need to unmute.
Yes, now I'm trying to remember what the hell I had my hand up for. Oh,
Ah.
it was to do with When you buy Windows 10, presumably it's the latest update.
Doesn't actually matter. When you buy Windows 10, whatever you get when you download it from Microsoft is probably the latest version.
Right.
But if you end up with an older version, you just need to install the update when Windows Update pushes it at you anyway, which Windows is a lot more aggressive than Mac OS is at doing software updates, so it sometimes doesn't do version upgrades as such.
Whereas if you're just getting a Windows product such as Office or a part of Office for Mac, there would be a specific version.
That also varies. If you get Office 365, or now called Microsoft 365, that's their subscription product, that gives you the latest version, which is always updated, but you have to pay annually for it. If you buy a specific Microsoft Office home/student or home/business of a particular year, that gives you one specific version which only gets security updates and bug fixes and never gets any new features and is obsolete within 5 years, and you then have to buy another version. So those are your two choices basically. It's cheaper to buy the full retail one, the standalone one, but you can only use it on one computer. It doesn't cover your other devices. Office 365, you can use it for up to 5 devices and like 5 computers, 5 phones, 5 tablets, as well as having online features. So it does have some advantages.
Okay, so presumably it's best to buy it at the beginning of the year, not at the end.
Doesn't really matter. If you were talking about buying the standalone version, it's best to wait until they come out with the new version, which they did last year, and then buy that, and then 5 years later, that version will stop getting updates and you'll need to buy another new version. But they come out with a new version about every 3 to 5 years typically.
Okay, thanks.
Or at least a new retail version, I should say. Okay. All right, moving along. So any further Windows questions, or can we get on to Mac stuff? No other hands raised. So for those who weren't here last week, I can, let me see if I put this one into sharing mode. I'll just close that. That's just my notes. I've got some of my notes open at the moment. Those are the 2 Macs I'm currently running Big Sur on, just for reference. So the About screen. So the top one is in fact, I don't know if you'll recognize the serial number, but Reg, that's your 2015 MacBook Air that you kindly donated to me. So that's running Big Sur. So it's got 8 gigabytes of memory and bare minimum storage, and it's able to run Big Sur quite happily. So that's my sort of reference computer. And I'm also running Big Sur on the M1 MacBook Air. Plus I've got an M1 Mac Mini, which I didn't include in this screenshot yet. So we've got 2 of those, which we can look at if there's anything people want to see, particularly running on those computers. But if I just use the right computer, close that. So on here, that looks right, yep. So this is running Big Sur. I'll just get rid of some of the extraneous stuff I've got open. That's me doing an Xcode project or something. And so was that. Right, so there I've got the application folder open. Can I minimize that to make it easier to see? Yep, there we go. So just looking at the visual design of it, you'll notice the icons are all very iPhone-like. They're all squared off rather than rounded. So most of the third-party applications which have already been updated for Big Sur have also followed suit. So you'll see, for example, whose microphone is that? Is that Lance?
Yeah, it must be.
Okay, I'm just going to mute you for the moment, Lance, because they're causing a feedback loop. So it makes it bad for everybody. Right, so yeah, so just using Xcode there as an example, you'll see that the typical pattern they're using is to do a rounded rectangle which is reminiscent of iOS applications, but icons, but they also are retaining the classic sort of Mac icon appearance of having some kind of tool which may extend outside the rectangle. So it's not a simple rectangle with something inside it. the various third-party apps have rapidly followed suit. Xscope is a example of a third-party developer utility which I've got, which they've already updated their icon to look right. Zoom happened to be about the right shape already, so it didn't actually need to change. I've got some iOS apps installed on this computer. That Overcast is actually an iOS app, not a Mac app. I'm trying to see any others. Widgetsmith is also an iOS app, so that's a couple I've got there just as examples. And so is Good Sudoku, so that's 3 at least I've installed so far. But Battle.net is an example of one that hasn't yet changed its icon, and nor has Blackmagic Disk Speed Test. So those are both third-party ones that are still using an older style of icon. So they're still rounded. This does look a bit strange if you're running Catalina, because as applications get updated, or maybe even Mojave, the icons on the older operating systems match what they look like on Big Sur for the third-party applications. So you're starting to get a mixture of rounded rectangles and circles for the icons, which is a bit weird, but they're getting there. Now, can I hide that thing? I can't see properly. Hide, show media controls, thank you. Right, now that I found out how to do that. The other obvious differences around the window design is that they have the entire left-hand side is a visually separated sidebar. So on previous operating systems, these red, green, and yellow buttons at the top were part of the title bar. Now they visually look like they're part of the sidebar. And the title bar no longer spans the entire top of the window. What they've done here is they've merged the title bar and the toolbar that normally goes underneath it into a single entity. So you've got icons along here for controlling things like picking the view, which would normally be toolbar buttons. And if you point to them, you'll see it brings up tooltips. So you may not remember what the buttons mean, but if you pause for long enough, you can get a hint. And the search one expands to a search field like it would on other systems. If I make that wider, is it able to keep it open if I just click on something else? Yeah. It does actually stay open. So it's only because the window is quite narrow that it squashed it down to a single icon. And also notice there that the view options expanded automatically when I made the window wider. So it wasn't a sort of a pop down, and it's now a full width multi-selector. The title is offset to the left. And when you point to the title, the icon that represents the object, the document or folder of that window appears. So that's yet another example of a hidden user interface feature which only shows up when you point to it. Now that little icon is quite handy sometimes for doing things like dragging a file around between folders, because it acts as a proxy for the underlying document icon. It's able to do things like you can move a folder or move a file to another location. You can control click on it to get a list of where you are on the computer. So it gives you a pop-down folder. I think that actually happens for the entire title, not just the icon. So if I click there, if I control click or right click there, it gives me the same thing. But I mean, I'm sort of getting used to it now. I haven't used Big Sur heavily yet, but as I use it, I sort of, okay, that's different, but I can cope with that. So that seems fine. Otherwise, the other obvious difference here is the title bar is no longer a solid color. By default, it's now a translucent title bar which takes on the color of the desktop background. So if I come into System Preferences and change my desktop, rather than being the default one, I'm going to change it to one of these dynamic desktops for an older system. You'll see the title bar color changed. Every time I change my desktop background, it changes color of the title bar to match it. How do I get back to the one set of there? That's the default one. Yep. So then the color of the title bar takes on the hue of the desktop background. Also, if you have a light colored area at the top of the title bar, it changes to black text. If you have a dark color, it changes to white text. Sometimes that doesn't work too well. If your picture spans from light to dark across the screen, you might not be able to read half of it. So I'm not particularly happy with that feature. If I go back to the standard one, and the other thing I wanted to point out is if you really don't like that, there is a feature you can turn on under accessibility, called Reduce Transparency. And what that does, it turns off all of the transparent features in the user interface and gives you something more resembling older operating systems. So if you really can't cope with it, you can just switch it off via System Preferences Accessibility. Okay. Now, as I'm doing screen sharing right now, I can't see if anybody is doing any chat requests. Can I just have a quick look at that? And just check this participants. Okay, Andrew has explained why Lance is echoing. Lance, you've actually joined the meeting twice on 2 devices, so you've got a feedback loop internally. So I suggest you unjoin on one of your 2 devices so that we don't get that feedback. Then you won't need to worry about muting your microphone anymore. So if you actually leave the meeting from one of them. Okay, I can see that, that's fine. Just put that up there. Okay, next user interface feature I wanted to point out was the widgets in the toolbar along the top. They've got the time, the new control center icon. If you click on that, you can see all the control center features. So it's similar to the control center on iPhones and iPads. So it's got Wi-Fi control, and each of these are little pop-out things. The style of these is very similar to iPhones. You notice they've got the sort of the on-off switch, which I won't fiddle with because it will interrupt the internet connection, rather than it being a checkbox. So they're doing some user interface elements which are copied from iPhone and iPad. Now, up in the toolbar, up in the menu bar itself, you'll see there's also a Wi-Fi icon there and a battery icon. But I don't have icons there for Bluetooth and all the other things. So having them all inside the control center is a lot more space efficient. But if there was some of these things you actually did want to have permanently or semi-permanently in the menu bar, you can actually pick these up and drag them up into the, so it's not doing it for me this time. There we go. Pick it up and drag it into the menu bar so you can actually position them where you want to put them. So I can then add Bluetooth into the menu bar as well. And I can then access that directly from the menu bar rather than having to go via the control center. So ones you use frequently, you can put in the menu bar, but if you take them out again by command dragging them off till they disappear, they're still available via control center. So you can still get to them easily enough. So Spotlight is one which doesn't show up in the control center. That's the computer user switcher, battery level indicator. Zoom is using significant power. That's Zoom's menu, which is put there while it's running. If I go into System Preferences again, then in here we found that under Dock and Menu Bar, there is a new section in here to control all of the icons that appear in the menu bar, so you can get them all in one place. On previous OS versions, you had to go and find the right screen. So for example, you had to go onto the Wi-Fi, the network screen, then the Wi-Fi screen to turn on the Wi-Fi icon. But now they're all available in one place. And there's also a section in here for the control center. Or each one of these, I think, can be added to the control center. So it says underneath them where they're appearing, menu bar and control center, for example. If I come down here a bit further, accessibility shortcuts has options in there for show in menu bar or show in control center. So I can turn that on, and then I've now got quick access to all my accessibility shortcuts down the bottom. And what that does is it opens up quick access to all of them in one place. So that's quite a handy feature as well. So if there are other Apple features you often want to access, you can just put them in the control center rather than tying up more space in the menu bar, which is important when you have a lot of third-party software which uses space in the menu bar. One thing you can't do yet is you're not able to put third-party icons in control center. It's only Apple stuff. So it will take a wee while, I imagine, but at some point in the future, I expect Apple will add that feature. It's just not there yet. Any questions so far? So I'm just going through user interface things. We did actually talk about this stuff last week, so I'm repeating myself to some extent, but I've got a better idea of where things are now, so it helps. Okay, the next thing I wanted to show was the, what do they call it? It used to be called the notification center. If you click on the time, it slides out this extra panel on the other side. And that now has a mixture of the notifications at the top and widgets underneath it. And these widgets are exactly the same widgets that Apple added in iOS 14. So they're the new style of widgets. Apple has a whole bunch of standard ones, and they're organized into categories. So for example, I can have a photos widget. I can choose small, medium, or large. If I make it a large one, then drop that in here somewhere and slide them around. So I can just put that in there. If I'm finished, then I can now basically, I'll actually run photos. I don't particularly want to do it at the moment, but oh, there we are. That'll take you to that particular photo. So the photos widget is one which just shows you a random photo from your photo library, which I find quite amusing on my iPhone when it suddenly pops up a photo of something I hadn't seen for ages. So it's a nice little reminder. If I go down to the edit feature again, have you got the way to stack these on top of each other? If I use that one, can I create a stack? I haven't spotted that feature yet. There's probably a way to do it, but I haven't actually worked out how yet. It's not obvious, but if I pick up that one and then, no, it doesn't seem to want to put them on top of each other, so it's not obvious. One down the bottom here is actually a third-party one. So I've got WidgetSmith as an app that was released recently for iPhones, which allows you to create customized widgets with a whole bunch of information in them. The same app runs on M1 Macs in Big Sur. So that just gives me a nice, pretty way of looking at the time in a human readable form rather than it being a sort of a clock hands or something like that. So it's saying it's 7:45. And at the moment, the widgets on Big Sur only appear in this little side panel notification center, whatever they're calling it. I haven't actually memorized the name yet. So you can't put them anywhere else on the screen, which is a bit like the iPad. They only appear on the left-hand side in the Today view on the iPad, but they can go anywhere on the home screen on the iPhone. So I expect that will improve later. It's just not there yet. Okay. So user interface looks fine. I'm going to stop sharing on this computer if I can. How do I stop share there? Go back to full video. Nobody else has tried to join yet. I'm expecting at least one latecomer. Okay, so now that I've gone through a sort of a quick overview of Big Sur's user interface, does anybody have any comments or questions about that at this stage? No? All right. So the next major topic I can think of to go on to is application compatibility with Big Sur. Is there anybody who has any particular applications they would like to know about that they may be slightly obscure? Because basically all of Apple's stuff that comes with the operating system or is available that Apple makes from the App Store, so Pages, Numbers, Keynote, Final Cut, Logic, GarageBand, iMovie, all those sorts of things, they're already updated and ready to go. Third-party stuff is still catching up. The current state of play is that Big Sur is on the initial release, 11.0.1, and version 11.1 is up to its second developer beta. So that should be coming out, might be before the end of December, almost certainly by the end of January. That's likely to be a notable bug fix and security fix and feature update. So there'll be a few features which aren't there in the initial release which get added on at that point. So we don't know exact timing yet. My usual advice is for most people, try to avoid the initial release of the new operating system just because of the worst possible chance of having compatibility problems. But I haven't done a lot of testing with applications yet, but I have got another of my computers already running. If I share screen on this one. So this is the 2015 MacBook Air, which is actually currently running from a clone of my 2013 MacBook Pro, and therefore it's got all my normal applications on it, and I've done as little as possible to it, and it's basically now running Big Sur with lots of incompatible software on it, just to give us some ideas. Trying to find the hide. Okay, so I can see properly. There we go. So on this computer, I've already had some App Store updates. What did I have to install recently? There's one still pending. Oh, that's just IA Writer. But if you have a look at the list of recent stuff, so a couple of Apple programs there, Apple Configurator, GarageBand, Pixelmator Pro, Evernote. The rest of the stuff is Apple's, Core Tunnel, Termius, these sorts of things. So I've got a fair amount of weird utilities I've installed, not an awful lot of general purpose stuff. They've all been updated already with Big Sur compatibility features, so they should be all right. So all the App Store stuff is tending to catch up reasonably quickly. Third-party applications vary quite a lot. You'll notice along the top of my screen there, I've got quite a lot of icons on the menu bar. That's because I normally run a program called Bartender, which lets me subdivide the icons, third-party icons, into multiple groups. I have not yet hidden all the ones that Big Sur would be able to hide. So I previously had Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and all these sorts of things open up, so I can actually get rid of some of them immediately, like that one, and just use the control center for Bluetooth. That's fine. But I've got Siri there, I've got search, that's multiple users, Wi-Fi, that is keyboard selector, battery, what's that one? Oh, that's iStat menus, which looks like it's already working. So it's able to give me detailed graphs of CPU usage. It's quite busy actually, surprisingly, on this computer. I wonder what it's like on the other ones. I've deliberately muted the microphone to avoid feedback. That's Time Machine, a third-party thing called Keyboard Maestro, Time, which is for timekeeping, for keeping track of work hours and that sort of thing. Box, which is if you've heard of Dropbox, Box is one of the competing competitors. I've got accounts on practically every online file sharing service, so that's just one of them. This one I'm not sure if it's working properly yet. This is a third-party utility I've got called SwitchRes 10, which allows me to gives me better control over screen resolutions if I'm using things like the projector at meetings. So that's one I may have to get an update for. This one's not working because it requires an update. So Little Snitch won't work until I install the new version, which means paying for the new version. So I haven't yet bought that one. Next one across there is Microsoft's OneCloud, I think. Yep, OneDrive, sorry, OneDrive. Duet, which is used for sharing screens with an iPad. You don't use Apple's method. TeamViewer, which looks like it is happy. I haven't actually checked it. And so it's sort of a bit of a mixed bag. Bartender, I have to pay for an upgrade. Little Snitch, I had to pay for an upgrade. I've also got some third-party utilities, which I had to wait for a new version to be available, and I haven't installed it yet on this computer. So it's a kind of like half of them are working okay straight away, but the other half aren't yet. And I've got quite a lot of older stuff that I expect will be problematic, especially anything 32-bit. So I've still got iWork 09 on here, for example. And I know that won't work because it's 32-bit. And you'll see there, the icon for it says, it's got a white cross through it. It won't let me even open it. And it will tell me, Pages 09 isn't supported, and this knows what it is, but it just says you can't do it. Go and download the latest version, please. So you expect that for any of the 32-bit applications. So I don't want to go and download that. I'll have some other stuff lurking in obscure places like that. So I already knew about them because they're not running on Catalina. When I started using Catalina on my 16-inch MacBook Pro, I chose not to migrate everything across from the old one. I've manually installed applications as I go. So this is more of an extreme test case than a real one. I wouldn't actually have all these applications installed again on a new computer. I'm using this as an excuse to sort of clean things off. Okay. Does anybody have anything specific to individual applications they would like to ask about?
I just noticed you had TeamViewer on your
Yep.
selection there. So a quick hunt on Google. I wasn't aware that was also available on the Mac, and it seems to be cross operating system compatible as well. Can you comment?
Yes, I have been using TeamViewer for doing remote technical support for people for many years. I'm actually subscribed to it and I'm paying for it on an annual basis, and I'm earning just enough money with it to pay for it, basically. It's fairly expensive. You can use it for personal use for your own computers for free, but if you use it for basically anything which they classify as beyond personal use, you have to pay for it, which is an annual subscription, and it starts at around about $700 and something a year. So it's not cheap. So I'm using it. I use it at work as well for work, controlling remote computers at work and for clients at work. But for my personal technical support work, I use it as well for people I don't want to go and visit in person for any particular reason. So I have used it, for example, for some people who I'm not needing to do anything physically on their computer. It saves me a trip either across Wellington, or it means I can help people outside Wellington. It works out very nicely. So it works reasonably well. It's a little bit clunky in terms of its user interface, but it's fine in terms of cross-platform use, Windows to Mac and back. I also happen to have the iOS support add-on for it, which allows me to view but not control iPhones, iPads, and also Android devices from the Mac. So I can help somebody with one of those, but I have to talk them through what to do on the screen to get to the right point to get it started, and then also whatever I'm trying to help them with. But one thing I have found about it is its audio doesn't seem to be particularly good. So I tend to prefer to actually use a phone call or some other means of doing audio and use TeamViewer to do the remote control and monitoring kind of stuff. So one way I found of doing that, which works quite nicely, is I actually use Zoom to establish an initial connection with somebody, and we're chatting away, and then we'll start running TeamViewer, and I can then see their screen through Zoom, and I can help them get TeamViewer up and running, because the initial starting process is rather cumbersome with the security features in recent macOS versions. It needs to have permission to do screen sharing and accessibility controls and things like that, which is a nuisance to set up with Mojave and later. But yep, works very well. I use it mostly for screen remote control, but I also use it for file transfer if necessary. I haven't used its meeting features much. I did use it briefly a while ago, but Zoom's generally better with that sort of stuff.
Thank you.
Okay. I can definitely recommend it, but it's expensive if you need to use it for anything non-personal. That's the only problem. Certainly, if you just want to if you have multiple Macs or Macs in different locations, it's quite handy. So just as a sort of a more personal use, for example, I've got TeamViewer normally running on my main MacBook Pro, and I can use that to remotely control any of my about 4 Mac Minis that are normally running at home. Even if whether or not I'm at home, it works through the local network or across the internet without me to do anything complicated. So getting into a network works quite nicely. And another example of how I've got it set up is one of my Mac Minis I've got always awake, and my PC, which is at home, which is an HP running Windows 10, is normally asleep. But I've configured it running TeamViewer to wake up via the network, and I can tell it to wake up using my Mac Mini, and then TeamViewer can connect to the PC that was asleep. So I can do that sort of neat trick as well. So as long as you've got a dedicated computer that can wake other ones up, it's quite nice if you have multiple computers on your network. Okay, other application questions that anybody might have? No?
David, is the problem I'm having with Safari, can you address that at all?
The problem you're having with Safari, you have to refresh my memory on that one.
It keeps on coming up with a message to say that it's running out of memory.
Right.
And,
Let me just
when
stop.
When I look at the activity monitor, it's still well and truly in the green, so it's not actually overloading the system at all.
Go off that, so I'm back to normal again.
It seems like a bit of a bug.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm still puzzled by what might be happening with the mention of the meeting last week, but I still don't know what it might be.
I haven't been able to find any anything on the internet to say about it, but it wasn't there before I uploaded Big Sur. It's only in the very latest version of Safari, which is Safari
1401.
Safari 14.0.1.
Yeah. Okay, because I'm running Safari 1401 on Mojave as well, so I've got that version, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. So you've done an internet search already and haven't found anything?
No.
So Safari, Big Sur, memory.
If you look at activity monitor, you see that the individual pages just start getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, this will be a laugh. Where's mine? Memory. Yeah, if I go back to Zoom again and go share screen. So here's my here's my activity monitor at the moment. So I've got 16 gigs of memory. It's using 14 gigs of it, but it's already swapped 5 gigs in total. Safari is running with, let me see, there's bizarre things going on. Why on earth does Keychain Access need nearly a gigabyte of memory? There's something weird going on with memory management in recent operating system versions that don't seem to make any sense. That, plus that, plus that, plus that, plus that, plus that. Those are all Safari pages. There's another one. Whoops, no, it's not that. That one, that one, that one. There's another one. So those are all bits of Safari. So you can see it's all adding up to quite a lot. There's several gigabytes worth of memory that Safari is using. Just to give you an idea of how much I've got running in Safari, if I go to, how do I do it? Not that one. Remember how I get to the right, the correct gesture. Not that one. Well, that'll sort of do. I've currently got 16 Safari windows open. And some of them have that's got about 15 tabs. That one's got another 10 or so. That one's got about 20 tabs open. So in total, I've probably got 100-ish Safari tabs open. It seems to be coping quite happily.
Well,
back around again.
When you actually start reading something online and look at the activity monitor, you see it starting to increase in size, as though it's got a memory leak somewhere.
Yeah, well, I've found some comments online saying Safari memory leaks in Big Sur, so in my first thing I look for. So
what I found, I've only had 2 or 3 tabs open, and I still get the same problem. And if I reload that page and go back to the same spot that I was looking at, or if it was a video, then the memory drops from gigabytes down to megabytes, hundreds of megabytes. Right. It just keeps building back up and up again. So the only way around is just keep reloading the page.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that as of Safari 4.0, Safari's memory usage seemed to jump, but its system seemed to be coping okay with it, except on certain computers. Let me just fix this. Somebody else wants to join the meeting. I've got to find the button. What do they have? Where do they have that? Can't find my mouse.
I haven't found any problems with Big Sur. It's been working reasonably well.
Okay, I'll have to stop screen sharing. Can't work out how to get the mouse to that position on the screen. Got one more person want to come in. There we go. Yeah, well, I haven't used Web Safari heavily on Big Sur yet, but you're doing this on an older Mac.
It's 2017 iMac.
I mean, but it's not a M1. I mean, it's a Intel one, so that may affect the.
Nothing fancy like that yet.
No. Any idea what websites you've been visiting, just so I can try and repeat it?
Well, you probably won't want to go and visit the ones I've been looking at, but anyway.
Okay.
Not pornographic or anything. Just
no, not particularly interesting. So, for example, if I just start loading some web pages on here, Let's go to a particularly nasty one, which is somebody called Apple. And I go to Mac Pro page, for example, is one that makes it work hard. Yep, I've got those open. If I go to, let's see, that probably won't be logged in, but pick some more websites at random. Okay, so I've currently got 8 or so websites loading. This is on the Big Sur M1 Mac Mini, and also not M1 Intel MacBook Air. Going to zoom again if I share the screen from here. So currently I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 websites open. And if I go to Activity Monitor, of course it's not finding it, there it is. Go to memory, which looks stupid because the columns aren't wide enough.
What does Windows Server do? Because you're showing 276 megabytes, mine's showing 4.04 gigabytes.
Yeah, don't remember what it was on my other computer, but Windows Server is basically responsible for keeping cached copies of every window on the screen. So the more windows you've got open, and that probably includes tabs, the more memory Windows Server will need to keep track of them all. So it's used for doing things like regenerating the images behind the windows when you drag the window out of whatever it's obscuring. So it's an essential part of the operating system. It's existed since the original version of Mac OS X. Sometimes that goes crazy as well.
If you want to check one of the websites that I have been going to,
yep,
called x22reports.com. And then I've been reading some of the things, which is a little bit interesting about what's happening around the world at the moment. So it's just, if you go and have a look at one of the reports there, which is basically a video, it tends to bind up on that.
Oh God. Okay, Breitbart.com immediately sets my alarm bells ringing.
It's not Breitbart, it's X22.
No, that's where it went to when I followed the link from one of their articles.
Okay. No, if you go down, go down further down on that page, you actually see there's one of those reports there. Well, further down, you go further down, there's another one. Keep going, that one there.
That one?
Yeah. That's one of them. You have to look at the video, not the audio. There's things happening overseas that most people don't get to find out about. You've got to dig a little bit deeper to get it. And whoever does this has actually got his finger on the pulse pretty good.
Okay, so I've got the audio muted, so it won't actually show anything. But okay, so while that video is playing,
so what's that doing to your activity report?
I'm just looking at that now. So it's causing a problem with my internet connection, though. So this may not. It's chewing through internet connection trying to do this. So this may be difficult.
It's going up reasonably big. But if you start watching it, which you probably are, it'll just keep growing and growing and growing. So the only thing I can think of is it's a memory leak that's going on in Safari.
That doesn't look like it's doing anything unusual as far as I can see. It's just sitting there. It's going up slowly.
Are you doing that on your Mac?
That's on the MacBook Air with 8 gigabytes of memory. It's the worst possible case.
It's rising. It's going up.
Yeah, not measurably. It's only going up tiny amounts. It's hovering. Look at the memory pressure graph down here. It's pretty much stable. It's moved up slightly, but it's just sitting there.
That's what I'm finding. It's pretty stable down the bottom, but the memory going in for Safari goes up quite a bit. That's going up a bit there.
Well, it's gone up by 3 megabytes. It's 1%. That's nothing.
It goes up, it takes a while to go up, but it goes up into gigabytes.
It's going up and down. It's not actually changing noticeably. So I haven't seen any evidence this is doing anything out of the ordinary. It looks perfectly normal to me.
Okay. Well, this is mine. That's not the only one that does it though. There are other ones. Mainly video I'm watching.
It looks like it's stopped. So yeah, I mean, I tend to avoid watching videos online where I can because they're unreasonably bandwidth wasting and time wasting. But
Tend to be right on that.
yeah, but like if I'm reading stuff and I stumble upon an article which turns out to be a video, I'll immediately close it because I just don't want to know. I haven't got time to watch videos. I'd rather read something and skim it quickly. Decide.
Anyway, that's just I haven't been able to find anything about it, and I'm sure others must be having the same problem.
Yeah, well, it's if you can't find anything about it, it probably means it's not common enough to actually to be affecting lots of people. So it probably means that there's something specific on your computer that's triggering it. So, for example, you may have something installed in your copy of Safari that's not quite compatible with Big Sur, and it's causing the problem. You may have an extension or something like that.
Could be.
Okay. All right. So we've got at least one new person who's turned up. Peter.
Hello.
Hello. You're there. Yep. We've already gone through and just talked about sort of general macOS Big Sur user interface. I haven't talked much about the M1 Macs in particular yet. So I have here two examples. I can show you the physical computer section. Oh yes, I can unplug it easy enough. Yep. So
just one thing. I just did a quick check to see about memory leak in Safari, and there's a report on Apple's discussion forum, discussions.
Yeah.
And it's through 251.213.669.
I saw that.
It says huge memory leak in Safari. WebKit cause this page must be reloaded. That's exactly what's happening.
Okay, so some people are commenting on it, but I have not seen it myself, and it's not obviously. It isn't big enough news that it's been spreading out to all the news sites because I haven't seen any articles commenting on it yet. So it must be rather localized. It's only affecting some people.
This person says, I thought I was alone, but it's happening after the latest development security update. He's on Mojave 10.14.6. This is what somebody wrote.
Although there was a different problem that was affecting Safari 14 in Mojave, which they fixed in 14.01. So that may be a different problem.
This is probably, this is Safari 13.1, so it's an older one.
Oh, 13 is even older than this. It's a year older. Yeah. Okay. All right. Can I move on to M1s for now? So just to reiterate the point, this is my M1 MacBook Air. It's, as I said at the meeting, it looks just like any other MacBook Air. There's no physical difference apart from this one happens to be gold. Compared to any previous, the last two or so generations. The only very slight difference from the 2018 models is that because it's using the scissor switch Magic Keyboard, not the butterfly keyboard, the keys got 0.5 millimeter thicker, which means the entire computer got 0.5 millimeter thicker. So if you're looking at a 2018 model, it's a very, very tiny fraction thinner at the back. You can't tell if you're looking at it at the front. So otherwise, it's identical to the early 2020 Intel MacBook Air in terms of physical shape and appearance. So as with the Intel models, it's got 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports on this side and one audio socket on the other side. The Mac Mini, I'd rather not show you that at the moment, but because it's all plugged in, it'll be a bit tricky to unplug it. But basically, they've gone back from space gray to silver. That's the obvious change. So it's and they've also reduced the number of ports. I've actually got the 2018 Mac Mini, and I bought a reasonably high-end configuration, but they've all got 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, as well as having options for things like 10 gigabit Ethernet. At the moment, the M1 Apple Silicon models have some limitations, such as only being able to have 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, and also don't support lots of external displays. So those limits aren't likely to affect most people, but they might affect some people who've got higher end requirements if you need to plug in more than one display to your computer, that sort of thing. Typically, I use my laptop, one display, external display plugged in. Sometimes I run it with two. Quite often, if I'm running a Zoom meeting, I actually want conversation on one screen, normal Mac user interface on a second screen, and presentation on a third screen. So I can't do that at the moment with an M1 MacBook Air, but that's a rare requirement for me, and it would be more of an issue for some professional users who've got like two monitors side by side that they normally use in addition to the laptop screen. Or they want to plug in three monitors or externally or something like that, which you can do with some of them. So apart from that, I haven't used the Mac Mini heavily, but from everything I've been reading, effectively what we've got with the M1 models is three more or less identical computers, just with different external bodies. So you've got the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini are the three models at the moment. The MacBook Air has one feature which is different to the rest of them. And here is a document I created earlier, which might be of interest. Let me just share my screen again. I found the document I wanted. I can find the button. There it is, share screen. So I'm just sharing one window with you at the moment. So that's a list of recent and current standard Mac models to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So you'll see the ones that I coloured red are the previous models that have been superseded, and Apple has stopped selling those. The ones that are bright yellow are the new M1 models, and the ones that are white are the older Intel models which are still available. Does that make sense? So if you look along the top, I've got the family and model on the left-hand side, where there's more than one model available for the same family and model. I've listed low, mid, high as appropriate. So for example, with the MacBook Air, there are two standard configurations. There's a low and a high one. The only difference between those two in that case is just the amount of storage. So if you look across here, the storage field says 512 gig rather than 256 gig, and that pushes the price up a bit. When you get into the MacBook Pros, they've discontinued the two Thunderbolt port model and replaced them with the M1 models, which still have two Thunderbolt ports, so there's no functional change. And they still sell the Intel 4 Thunderbolt port model. So if you need the extra connectivity, you still have to buy an Intel model, and they still have those models available. When you get into the desktop models, so far the only desktop model that's been updated is the Mac Mini. So they've replaced effectively half of the Mac Minis, the Intel ones, with M1 models, but they've retained the high-end Intel Mac Mini if you need the extra connectivity or extra memory or something like that. Plus the iMacs, they still haven't come yet, and there's already high-end models. The general pattern I'm expecting is that the next ones that are going to get updated will be those four. So the MacBook Pro, should I go that way, it might be better. Yep, MacBook Pro with 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports and the 16-inch model, plus the high-end Mac Mini, plus the iMacs going at least up to the top of the 21.5s and possibly as far up as 27s. So all of those ones that I've marked are likely to be the next batch of models that Apple releases updates for to convert from Intel to M1. And that may happen sometime in the first half of next year or so, if they come up with a variant of the M1 that can do the extra connectivity and higher performance in some areas. Otherwise, we may be waiting until Apple releases an M2 processor, probably late next year, and that may appear in all of the these models as a first Apple Silicon upgrade. So not sure yet which way they're going to go with that. I've been sort of listening to various podcasts and reading commentaries online, and nobody else has any idea either. So I'm just sort of repeating the theories that other people are doing, but I seem to agree with most of those ones. So we don't know yet when these models are going to get replaced. I'd say, given that the 27-inch iMac got updated in August, but the 21.5-inch iMac didn't, there is a significant possibility that the 21.5-inch iMac could get an Apple Silicon model first and a 27-inch model coming later, especially as Apple's likely to be concentrating on doing the models with mid-range or low-end graphics. We've already got the low-end graphics models, which have now got much better graphics. The mid-range models will come next. The high-end models like the iMac Pro and Mac Pro are sort of probably end of next year. So end of 2 years away, 2022. So there's a fair range of models left to go. And for those who need to run Windows, you can still get Intel models if you need to buy a new Mac. In fact, I should mention I've been into a couple of local retailers. I went into Harvey Norman's in Porirua and Noah Lemmings on Featherston Street in the last week or so, and had a quick glance at what they had on display. They are still selling all of the Intel models. There is no hint whatsoever that these are not the latest models. There's no signage up saying discounted because we're getting rid of them or anything like that. They just appear to be continuing to sell them until they run out of stock. So given that Apple normally updates these displays, I suspect this is Apple's choice, and Apple is not yet pushing the new models. It does mean if you know anybody who's going into a retailer to buy a new Mac and they don't particularly need an Intel one, they definitely should be waiting until the Apple Silicon ones are readily available, because there's a massive difference in performance and also likely to get better in future in terms of upgradability and software compatibility and things like that. As long as they don't need to run Windows, that's about the only real exception for old Mac OS versions. I've now lost my train of thought slightly. I was talking about the M1 models that we've already got. So we've got the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini. Looking at just those yellow ones, you'll notice one difference there. The entry-level MacBook Air has a 7-core GPU, not an 8-core GPU. Now, the significance of that is pretty much non-existent for anybody who is not doing reasonably heavy graphics stuff. So if you're considering buying a MacBook Air and you just want a computer for general use, you're not trying to do anything heavy like run high-end games or doing lots of 3D graphics processing, there is no reason to fork out extra money to get the 8-core GPU. I worked out that it costs you basically $100 more to buy a computer with that in it. What you can do is you can custom order the entry-level model with whatever combination of memory and storage you need and save $100. So it's definitely worth considering that unless you want to get one in a hurry, in which case just going to the shop and buying an 8 gig, 512 gig one is a reasonable option. If you aren't in a hurry to get it, then custom ordering one with whatever memory and storage you need is a reasonable choice. Stop sharing that one for the moment. So that's the only option. Was there a question there? I thought I heard somebody speak, okay. So apart from the GPU, all of them are just described as being an Apple M1, and Apple has not said what speed they're running at. If you've looked at choices for Intel Macs, and I've repeated it here, they have all these details about how many cores they've got, what number of gigahertz, whether they're an i3, an i5, or an i7, whether they're 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th generation, etc. Effectively, all that information is collapsed down to a single specification. It's an M1. That's all you need to know. They're all the same, except the number of GPU cores in the entry-level MacBook Air. So people have actually gone to trouble of working out how fast these M1s are running in terms of clock speed, but for the most purposes, it doesn't matter. You don't need to think about that. Each M1 has got 8 processor cores inside it. There are 4 high-performance ones and 4 high-efficiency ones. Basically how this works is the 4 high-performance ones kick in when you're doing anything where the software is needing to do active work, and the efficiency ones can do low-priority background things. And one of the features of the M1 is it actually has at least one of the efficiency cores running all the time, even while the computer is asleep. So it's actually able to do work in the background without waking up the computer. So there's some changes in the way that they operate like that. So given that these computers have all got the same processor, why would you want a MacBook Air versus a MacBook Pro versus a Mac Mini? The Mac Mini is obviously limited in terms of mobility. It's very portable because it's nice and small, but it doesn't have a built-in keyboard, mouse, or screen. So you need to have those separately. If your workstation is sort of one place, you never need to move anywhere else, or maybe 2 places that you move back and forth from occasionally, but not regularly, that might be a reasonable option. And it's fairly cheap as well. It starts at $11.99, but that, don't forget, that doesn't include the cost of buying a separate screen, keyboard, and monitor. But if you've already got those, that's okay. You can just use your existing ones. If you compare just considering, setting aside the Mac Mini for the moment, considering just the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro, the key difference between the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro are shape. The MacBook Air is tapered towards the front. The MacBook Pro is a rectangular continuous shape. The second difference is the fan. The MacBook Air has not got a fan. The MacBook Pro has got a fan. This matters only if you're making the computer work hard. What it effectively means is the MacBook Air can keep doing moderate to heavy workloads for a few minutes. Then it has to slow down because it's not able to keep up with the amount of heat it's producing. But even when it's slowed down, it's still faster than the existing Intel Macs. So basically you don't need to worry about it. If you want a portable Mac, the MacBook Air is going to be fine for most people. The MacBook Pro, as it has a fan, that means if you're doing sustained workloads that are likely to go on for more than minutes at a time, they will be able to keep working hard for a lot longer. So an example of that might be if you're typically doing things like video conversion or something else where you need to run a project that might take tens of minutes to hours long, you will save time by getting a MacBook Pro rather than a MacBook Air because it will be able to run faster for a sustained period. That's the key difference there. In effect, the Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro are the same computer. They've both got fans, they both run at the same speed. The only real difference is the lack of the screen, the keyboard and the mouse and so forth. The MacBook Pro's got better speakers than the MacBook Air and also has slightly brighter screen. It can go up to 500 nits rather than 400 nits. I think that's the only noticeable difference apart from that. If I go back to my other document, numbers, I've got another one here I've used for many years, which has more detailed information just to make sure I'm not missing anything. If I just do that, let me share that one. So, any questions so far? I'm just going to carry on talking about these technical information. So here's my more detailed chart I've previously created, which shows the all the recent laptop models. So this has got the last couple of generations on it as well. So this shows more detailed information about things like memory, maximum memory you can install in it, the type of memory that it uses. One difference between the Intel and the M1 models is they've gone to P3, which means it's able to generate a wider range of colors. The battery life has improved substantially over the Intel models. The connection's the same. The price went down slightly. That's the current price in that column there. So it was previously $17.99 for that model, $17.99, can't say it. And it's now $17.49, so it's say $50. The high-end configuration has dropped $150, and that's basically giving you the 512 gig storage with no other change. If I move down to the MacBook Pros, you'll see there's the M1. It's basically replacing the one above it. And again, that's come down a little bit in price, $50. I think that's just an exchange rate adjustment. It didn't actually change price in the US. The MacBook Pro has a significantly longer battery life. You notice it went up from 10 to 17. So if you're comparing a MacBook Air and a MacBook Pro, there is somewhat of a battery advantage by going with the MacBook Pro. It'll last a little bit longer, which is the opposite way around from how it used to work. It used to be that the MacBook Air got more battery than the MacBook Pro. Moving down further, I've got a table here showing how all these devices compare in terms of what sort of connections they've got. I actually just realized I've got that wrong still. I thought I corrected that. That number is supposed to be 1.61. There we go, that's better. So this one actually carries off to the right. So the MacBook Air has a 30-watt USB-C charger. The Mac Pro is a 61 watts, so it's able to get more power externally. What's going on in the chat here? Oh, Ralph, you're asking a question about, is there a common standard monitor that users have with the Mac Mini? No, basically any monitor you like. I'm using a Dell 25-inch display and a Dell 24-inch older display and a Dell 17-inch VGA only, even older display. All I need is the right adapters. I haven't bothered buying any Apple monitors. Not they sell any affordable ones recently. I could use a Samsung one. I could use an LG one. It doesn't really matter as long as they got connectors that will be compatible with the USB-C, or you buy the right adapter, so you can go from a Mac Mini to HDMI directly, or to USB-C directly, or you can get a USB-C to, let me think, you can get USB-C to HDMI, USB-C to VGA adapters from Apple, and you can get third-party adapters for going to other things like DVI, which are generally only used in older monitors. So there's a huge range of options. The only real standard to be aware of is the maximum resolution. You can only use a 6K display on a Mac Mini. That's the biggest one it will run, which is going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars if you could get one. Apple's one is about $10,000. So not a problem in terms of what you can plug into it. You can plug a 4K display into the HDMI port, or a 6K or 5K or 4K or full HD or whatever you like into the smaller ones. Whatever suits you, basically, is the idea.
Thank you, David. Very helpful.
Okay. Okay, getting back to the connectivity questions again. So looking at how I've written this out here, Apple has changed the details slightly. If you see that bit I've highlighted there, how they describe the Thunderbolt ports on the M1 models. The previous generation were described as being USB-C or Thunderbolt 3 ports. The new ones are described as being Thunderbolt/USB 4. They are the same connector. The only difference is that it might be compliant with the new USB 4 standard. I don't think this actually makes any difference in terms of what you can plug into it or how fast it operates. It's just basically a terminology change. There is no change to the keyboard. There's no change to the dimensions. That's not actually different. I'll just unbold that. Didn't need to highlight that one. It did change in the previous generation. That 1.61 came in the last generation. So the keyboard's the same, the display's the same dimensions, the same external display support, basically. One other change here is the Wi-Fi has been upgraded to Wi-Fi 6, which is the same for all the M1 models. That's also known as 802.11.ax. That doesn't matter until you get a router which supports it, but it will be important in future because it means that it's Wi-Fi 6. It's a lot better than Wi-Fi 5 at sharing a Wi-Fi network with a large number of devices. It's more efficient. So once you've got enough devices using Wi-Fi 6, it makes sense to have a router which is able to support that. Right now, they're rather expensive. They're probably several $100s to buy one. So the no fan is an obvious feature. The colors haven't changed. The power hasn't changed. Moving down to the MacBook Pro, that's not supposed to be bold. That was that one bold again. So all these dimensions here haven't changed. There's basically no difference between the keyboard between the MacBook Air and Pro. They're exactly the same. The MacBook Air Pro gained a higher resolution display support because it actually jumped a couple of generations when we went to M1. No change to the other features. If I move down to the Mac Mini's on a different chart, I'll move down to the next table I've got here. This is showing the configuration options. I didn't actually color code these. I'll just do that now. Format, cell, color fill, and find my color view. And I want to do that one. There we are. That's better. And that one. Do that as well, so you can see which one's which. Yeah, there we go. So the yellow ones again are the new models. So if you look at the MacBook Air first, the line above it shows the previous early 2020 MacBook Pro. So that was the range of configuration options you could have before. You had 3 choices of processor, 2 choices of memory, 4 choices of storage, and the price ranged from $1,799 up to $4,049. With the M1 models, you can choose starting from either the 7-core or 8-core GPU, and then you can add either 16 gigabytes of memory or any combination of storage up to 2 terabytes. you'll see that the prices for the storage and memory increments haven't changed. They're exactly the same as before. The price range has gone down a little bit at the top end because Apple's no longer offering the expensive processor upgrade. It's always an M1, whereas with the Intel models, you could choose to spend $500 on a slightly faster Intel processor. So there's a money saving there if you want a reasonably high-end one. Incidentally, the M1 is considerably faster than even the fastest previous Intel processor that was available in the MacBook Air. So there's no, if you were debating whether to buy one of them, you can't actually buy those anymore anyway because they're custom only. But if you had got one of them, this is still a significant speed boost to go up to an M1. The top end M1 has gone up in price slightly. At the starting point, this is mainly because of the 8-core GPU. If you configure some combination of the 7-core GPU, so for example, if I pick the base price and I wanted a 1 terabyte SSD and I wanted about 16 gigs of memory, then looking at the bottom, I see that will cost me $2,799. Whereas if I started with the 8-core M1 and went with a 1 terabyte SSD and 16 gigabytes, it's $2,899. So you can see the $100 price difference there based on the top end difference of $100 shows it there as well. So that's 3.5 versus 3.4. Okay. Moving down to the MacBook Pros, again, the M1 MacBook Pro replaced the 2 Thunderbolt 3 port model. The graphics is hugely better. The CPU is hugely better. There's no longer an expensive processor upgrade. So again, the price drops by the price of that upgrade. So otherwise, it's pretty much the same price. There's no difference to the custom. Actually, that should be cheaper. I think I've made a mistake there somewhere. It's supposed to be a $50 price difference somewhere, so I made a mistake in my table somewhere.
Yeah.
You've got one shaded.
Sorry? Ignore that. I'm looking at that one down there at the moment. So I need to double check my numbers there. I think there's actually a slight error there. So that's all of the MacBook Airs. I don't think there's anything else of any useful information on that one. The Mac Mini, I haven't done such a detailed chart because it's of less interest to people, but I have at least got the model comparison there. So the recent history of the Mac Mini is that they had the late 2014 model, which they replaced in late 2018 with a substantially better model. That went to all solid-state drives, for example, rather than using hard drives and fusion drives. They did a minor update to that in early 2020. The only change at that stage was doubling the storage. So it brought it in line with all the other models. So they have discontinued the low-end Mac Mini and replaced it with the 2 M1 Mac Minis, but they've kept the high-end Intel Mac Mini. So that's that one, but its price has gone down a little bit. But you'll notice the price drops on the Mac Mini are huge. $250 cheaper to get the cheapest Mac Mini, $450 if you want the one with more storage, because they're no longer having to pay for extra features that they threw into that model. Again, I'll just color that one yellow. Oh, it's colored, it's just not colored correctly. That yellow, just so it highlights. I won't bother coloring the other one. So there's the new model. As you can see from the one above it, the main difference there is the number of Thunderbolt ports. It's dropped from 4 to 2, and it's able to support a bigger external display, but it can't support a third external display. It only supports 2 external displays on a Mac Mini. You lose the faster Ethernet option, but really that custom 10 gigabit Ethernet option is so expensive to actually use because you're having to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for switches and that sort of thing. It's not worth it. And it's got the newer Wi-Fi. Otherwise, apart from the color change, it's basically the same shape, same weight, everything. The Mac Mini upgrade options, I haven't done this the same way, but with this one, you can see the memory upgrade options in the Intel one go all the way up to 64 gig. So they only go up to 16 gig for the M1. So there's some extra memory headroom on the Intel models. The processors, you don't have the expensive processor upgrades. You have got the storage upgrades. So they're the same as before. Okay, I'll stop sharing that for a moment. We don't have another prospective late cover showing up. So any further, one thing I haven't talked about is memory. I mentioned in my article, I think, in Capital Apple, that all of the M1 Macs come standard with 8 gigabytes. So if you buy an off-the-shelf one, you get 8 gigabytes of memory. You can custom order all of them with 16 gigabytes of memory for an extra $350. The general advice from lots of people who've been testing them seems to be the Mac Mini, the M1 models in general seem to perform better than the Intel models if you only have 8 gigabytes of memory. There's a trick. The reason they perform better is the entire computer is a lot faster. So basically, not only is the processor faster, the graphics faster, the memory is also at least twice as fast as Intel Macs. The storage on the MacBook Air in particular, and the entry-level MacBook Pro, is also twice as fast. So that means if you are doing something on your computer which would previously have caused a Intel Mac with 8 gigabytes to get really slow, the M1 Macs will still get slower. You just won't notice it as much because the whole computer is so much faster. If you are tending to make it work with large amounts of data at once, basically is the key distinction. So you're either working on very large documents in the order of multiple gigabytes, or you want dozens of web pages open, or you want to do some large complicated video processing or something like that, you're definitely going to find it's worth having 16 gigs because that will keep the computer working faster. It doesn't have to waste it doesn't have to waste resources writing memory out to the solid state drive to use virtual memory. It'll just perform faster overall. But probably more people could get away with 8 gigs than they could before. So it's really dependent on what your typical workload is like. For home users, I'd say 8 gigs is probably fine, unless you are somebody like Reg who likes to open lots and lots and lots of web pages and finds that his 8 gig memory wasn't enough. Or me. So when I bought these two computers, I chose the 16 gig option for the MacBook Air because that's intended to be a computer my partner will be using for many years once I've finished playing with it. For the Mac Mini, I deliberately chose one with 8 gigabytes so I could just have something I could see what the experience was like, and that's going to be a secondary computer that gets occasionally used for whatever tasks I want to throw at it, and I don't care too much if it runs slowly, so I just bought the 8 gig model for that one. When I eventually get round to replacing one of my main computers, I'll be getting probably 16 or even 32 gigs, depending on what it is that I want to do at the time and what options are available. So, yep. Okay. I'm going to pause for a drink. Any questions? I have 7 things showing up in chat. According to that. Don't know why. Oh, that's on that computer. Okay, that's all right. No questions?
Are we all muted?
Anybody who wants to ask a question and is muted will need to unmute their microphone. Anybody who, or you can use the raise hand feature if you can spot that. It's in the participants list, the bottom of the list, if you want to bring that up. Down the bottom of the window, if you haven't got it open already, there's a participants button. If you click on that, it gives you the participants list on the right hand side, and there's also a chat button which opens up the chat window.
A couple of programs, but I'm expecting them to be updated either around New Year's or at the end of summer at the latest.
Okay. Yep. I've got a few things which, if I wanted to use an M1 Mac as my main computer, the main problem I can't do is the virtual machines running any version of Windows. So that limits my choices, but I've got other Macs so I can run those on, so I'm not worried yet. The ability to run older Mac OS versions is also a nuisance in my case because I find that quite handy. Just today I've run Lion, El Capitan and Yosemite on my current MacBook Pro just so I could check something quickly. So it's very handy to have that sort of capability if I'm answering questions to people. So that's my main concern really, is whether there's going to ever be a solution to allow me to run those older operating systems easily. But as I bought a 2019 16-inch Intel MacBook Pro, that'll be my main computer for several years anyway, so it's really, I'll be probably have a secondary computer as an M1 to keep with me when I need it for demos and things like that at meetings. At the moment the MacBook Air is serving that role, but I'll probably buy a slightly better MacBook Pro later on, when I feel the need. Margaret.
David, do you advise if you want to get a silicon Mac to get it straight from Apple? I mean, will they back and send it to you?
They'll send it to you anyway. It doesn't really matter where you buy it from. My indirect experience of doing custom model orders through retailers recently, I helped somebody buy an iMac last year, or might have been early this year, I can't remember now. It was before the pandemic, so it was probably last year. The main problem is if you custom order something through a retailer, you need to double and triple check they've got all the details right. The problem we ran into in this case is that despite me having gone through Apple's website, having selected all the options that were appropriate and circling which ones we changed and pointing to them out clearly, the retailer still managed to order the wrong configuration options. And in that case, it was only the keyboard, and I think it was supposed to be an extended keyboard rather than a standard keyboard on an iMac or something like that. So the only reason it was ordered through a retailer is that the person who was ordering the computer wanted to buy it through a particular retailer for some additional deal that retailer was offering or something like that. So they were able to get that if they did a custom order. If you're comfortable with ordering stuff online anyway, and you've got the credit card and everything like that, I've used the Apple website to order most of my computers for the last probably 10 years now. It's getting up to that sort of order of magnitude, except when I'm actually getting a friend to order it for me. When I had a friend who worked at Apple, which gave me a discount for a while, but he's no longer working at Apple, so I'm having to pay normal people prices rather than discounted prices again. Andrew?
Just one thing to note with
agility.
Sorry, Margaret, Andrew just had a comment there. Yep.
Just one thing to note with couriered items, especially computers. A lot of the Wellington region, people are following couriers around and picking up the parcels before you do.
Yep. And to compensate for that, Apple has a strict policy that the parcel must be handed to somebody and not just left. Some couriers will actually give you the option of leaving a parcel for if there's nobody home, but Apple doesn't do that. So their couriers will not allow them to do that. So the difficulty with ordering online from Apple is that you need to know roughly when it's going to arrive, and you need to plan to be home that day, and it may take, you don't know what time it's going to be delivered. So often the couriers will deliver to residential addresses later in the afternoon, like around about 6 o'clock or something like that, but you can't predict that. So you effectively have to guarantee you're going to be home for the entire day you're expecting it to be delivered, and sometimes you don't find that out until it's the day it's already out for delivery. So what you can do is at least use the tracking information that Apple provides when you place an order, so you have an idea of how close it is. So when you see it's with delivery courier and on that day, it means at least you know it's going to be delivered that day. But I've had enough experience now that I know if I'm ordering something which is a standard configuration or a popular configuration, it will usually ship from Sydney and will, under normal conditions, would normally take one business day to get to Wellington from Sydney. Under COVID-19, more difficult delivery conditions, it seems to be taking 2 days to get from Sydney. So it might take a day longer than normal. Plus the courier delivery time might take longer than that if you're not inside the Wellington, close to the Wellington CBD. They might need to send it to a regional courier, so that might take an extra day. If you're doing a custom order, it's usually shipped straight from China, and that comes out of a factory somewhere around Shanghai. And that typically adds 2 to 3 business days for the delivery to get it to the country, and has to go through customs clearance and then get shipped to Wellington and then comes to you via the normal courier. But you can track them. My tracking of the MacBook Air, which was a custom order, it showed item picked up in Shanghai, then it showed customs clearance in Auckland, then it showed out for delivery in Wellington. It didn't give me a lot of detail between them. The Mac Mini was a standard one that came from Sydney, and that took basically picked up in Sydney, out for delivery in Wellington after a delay, and then it got delivered. And I think in one of those cases, it actually arrived before I realised it was out for delivery. Luckily, somebody was home that day. So the advantage of getting it ordered through a retailer, even for a custom one, is that it will actually be delivered to the retailer. you then have to go into the retailer to pick it up. So you have to balance it against the risk of them getting the order wrong. But as long as you go through the order details with them and see that they filled it in correctly, that should be okay. But then that has the easy advantage of, you know, it's being delivered to somewhere safe. It's just a question of you having time to go back into the shop and pick it up again. And they may want to offer extra services like transferring data for you. I tend to recommend not doing that because, again, my indirect experience with retailers transferring data, other people who try to do this, they get it completely wrong. They don't know how to do the data transfers correctly to new Macs, and you end up with things missing. And I've had to actually completely repeat the process for a couple of people who've bought a computer from a retailer, and the retailers allegedly transferred their data and then discovered lots of stuff was missing. So it isn't all that difficult to do a data transfer from an existing Mac if you've got the right cables, which I have, but it's a little bit more complicated if you want to do it if you haven't got all the right bits and pieces. You can do it via Wi-Fi in a pinch, but it's a bit slow. Ethernet's better. Thunderbolt is much better. This is sort of general pattern I've got.
Do we know what cables we're going to need? I mean, you've told us a lot about connectivity, but
yep.
It's probably good to be a bit patient and check all that off then and make sure you've got them all.
Is that in terms of like plugging into your existing peripherals? That hasn't really changed for the last 6 years or so, or 4 years, since about 2016 when Apple was introducing models with USB-C and Thunderbolt ports. Effectively, you've needed adapters to convert to older devices with USB-A ports on them or B ports, or you need to replace cables to connect to old devices. So that doesn't change for the M1 Max. You just basically, if you've already got a 2016 or later model with Thunderbolt 3/USB-C ports, those cables will keep working. If you haven't yet moved on from a 2015 or earlier model that has USB-A ports and older Thunderbolt ports, you might need to buy some new cables or adapters to deal with that. So I've talked about them repeatedly at meetings. The quite handy third-party ones that offer things like single USB socket with multiple ports of different types for portability, they're quite good. One I've got here, which I quite like, I've just bought this one, is I had this at the meeting. It's a, if I can get the light right, CalDigit branded. You can see the size of the thing. It's compared to my trackpad, there's my trackpad, so it's actually smaller than my Apple trackpad in at least one dimension. It's not huge. If I hold it next to my head, that should give you an idea of scale. This one's a reasonably expensive option. It's actually a Thunderbolt 3 dock, and so it plugs in. It's got its own power supply. It plugs into the computer via a Thunderbolt 3 cable they supply with it. They cost around about $500, give or take, and it has a monstrous number of connectors on the back. So you can see it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 USB-A sockets. There's the Thunderbolt 3 socket to go to the computer. There's another Thunderbolt 3 socket there to do daisy chaining. There's another USB-C socket there if you want to plug in something else. It's got a display port connector for an external monitor. It's got an optical audio output. It's got Ethernet, and that's its power input. And then on the front, it's got an SD card slot, headphones, microphones, another USB-C port, and another USB-A port. So I quite like this sort of thing because I can leave it on my desk and just plug one cable into my computer and it powers the laptop, as well as connect to all the peripherals I normally plug in. And because this one can supply up to 85 watts, so it's got nearly enough to supply a 16-inch MacBook Pro at full power, and definitely enough for a 13-inch MacBook Pro. There are cheaper versions of those. They get down to the sort of $200 to $300 range if you sacrifice Thunderbolt and just go with USB-C. They get down to the 100 to 150-ish range if you want a portable one that doesn't have its own power supply. So the one I have to go and grab it. Hang on a sec. Let me just rummage around in my bag to find the thing. Those who've seen me at meetings know I have vast amounts of stuff hiding in these bags, so finding the right thing is sometimes a challenge.
Sorry, David, I didn't mean to hold you up this long
No,
for your
that
drink.
it. No, that it. Yes, no. Well, that's an interesting one anyway. That one there is a USB-C to VGA or HDMI or DVI adapter. And that one is an A-Logic brand one, which I bought from Harvey Norman, I think. So that's readily available. I can't remember what it cost, but it was on special at the time. And I wanted the option of connecting to all those other things. Here is my Apple Thunderbolt 3 cable, which is what, a 0.8 meter cable, which is looks like it's got USB-C plugs at both ends. So that one is useful for plugging two Macs together or plugging anything which uses Thunderbolt 3 into something else which uses Thunderbolt 3. Rummaging further, I find it at last.
I think I'll just need a Thunderbolt 2 to Thunderbolt.
Put the
2.
headphones back on so I can hear any questions. And just rescue that bit of paper which fell down. There we go. Got it. So there is the one I originally bought, which is a Satechi, that shows up there. Satechi.
Yes, he's got it.
Branded. This one's a USB-C to SD card, micro SD card. That's its external power input, so you can power the computer through this, but it can only deliver 60 watts. So you just plug your laptop power adapter in there and it carries power through. Gigabit Ethernet, 3 USB-A ports and an HDMI port. So there are a variety of different versions of this particular product from this company, plus A-Logic does them and Belcom does them and various other people as well. And that sort of thing is very handy as a portable adapter. These cost sort of $100 to $150 range, and they're quite handy just to carry around with you. I actually carry that with me, even though I don't normally have a computer which it plugs into, so it's occasionally been helpful to plug into somebody else's USB-C capable Mac, just so I've got a way to connect other things to it if I happen to be visiting somebody. So those sorts of things are very handy. The other one I tend to recommend people get, just have one of. I have to go and get it again. It's not quite in reach. Should be there somewhere. Don't see it. It's moved. Now, the cable's got caught. Let go, let go. Right. Yeah, it's not where it's supposed to be. I have to find it. I've mislaid it temporarily. Apple has just a simple USB-C to USB-A adapter. I'll just find the page for it. Where's it gone? What? Accessories. There it is. So there is the standard Apple adapter, that's almost life size. It's not very long, but it's got a USB-C socket plug at one end and a USB-A socket at the other end. They're $35. They're available from most retailers. It's just handy to have one of those. I tend to keep one in my bag. I must have left it somewhere else temporarily. I think it's plugged in somewhere on my desk, which I can't spot at the moment. So it's one of these mini cables floating around here. And that is just a handy one to have to plug in a single USB-A device. So I can carry one of those around with me as well.
You get a USB 2 to USB, a one between Thunderbolt 3 and Thunderbolt 2 a few years ago.
Yes.
I think I'm going to need one of
I don't
those.
remember where I put that one. It's in my main bag. There is one of those. The likelihood that you're going to need it is pretty slim. Not very many people have got Thunderbolt devices, so I bought this one because it's useful for connecting older and newer Macs together.
Yeah, mine's 2015, so I
But-
need it to go from Thunderbolt 2.
There it is there. So that's the Thunderbolt 3 connected at that end and the Thunderbolt 2 at the other end. These things cost about $90 just for this adapter. And if you want to plug it into a computer that's got Thunderbolt 2, you also need to buy a Thunderbolt 2 cable, which is about another $90. So you're already looking at $180. If the only reason you're getting it is to transfer data from an old computer to a new computer, the cost is not worth it. You're better off just taking longer to do the transfer and using Ethernet or Wi-Fi or something like that. It's more worthwhile if you have, for example, a investment in multiple FireWire devices, because if you want to plug anything using FireWire into a recent Mac, you need to go via Thunderbolt and have a Thunderbolt FireWire adapter. So you can use a Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt adapter plus a Thunderbolt to FireWire adapter. Then you can plug a FireWire cable into the end of that. So that lets you, I've got like a bunch of FireWire hard drives still that I'm basically waiting until they die before I stop using them. But many of them, they've also got a USB plug in them, so I can just switch over to the USB plug instead. But I won't bother with the older ones that are either FireWire only or FireWire and USB 2, which is too slow. FireWire and USB 3 ones are far more reasonably performant. So that would be a better option. So that sort of thing might be a reason to get one, but for most people, I don't say just don't bother. If you have actually got Thunderbolt peripherals, now the reason, getting back to this dock again, the CalDigit one, the reason to use Thunderbolt with something like this is that because it's got so many things you can plug into it, Thunderbolt 3 gives it 40 gigabits per second connection speed, whereas USB-C would only give it 10 gigabits per second. So if you're trying to plug in lots of things at once, the additional performance of Thunderbolt makes a difference because it means it doesn't need to share a limited speed bandwidth connection to the computer between lots and lots of peripherals. So if you're intending to plug several things into it, or you want to plug in, for example, Ethernet plus an external display plus multiple USB devices, you would probably benefit from getting a Thunderbolt one because it's going to not slow anything down because Thunderbolt's so much faster than USB. Okay. Have I run out of things to talk about? Any further questions?
Yes, you can have a cup of coffee now.
Yep, I can continue drinking my glass of water in the meantime.
Have a slight break now. Think about it. Are you recording this, David?
Graham's recording on our behalf, so we have the whole thing. So
Yeah,
yep.
I'm just so doped up with drugs at the moment that I probably am not taking everything in.
No, that's fine. Well, we'll have it all afterwards. I've already uploaded, I sent the email link out as well for the previous week's one. It just took me a few days to get to the point where I was ready. For those who were at the meeting, I mentioned at the end that I had a blocked ear at that point. It turned out I had an ear infection, which has meant I've had to go to the doctor and have ear drops in one ear. And that's basically wiped me out for 2 days while I was totally exhausted by the significant pain that I was getting, including not being able to chew at one point. So that was nasty. I'm still recovering, but it's no longer painful.
Yeah, very low.
So I've sort of going to go and get the ears cleaned out because there's wax build up, but that's minor now compared to the pain I was suffering for 2 days. So, yep.
Right, it's recording now, David.
Yep, I think so. Any last requests?
Pixie Caramel?
Yeah. Classic joke. We have not got a firing squad, though, to help.
All right, I will stop recording it now and upload it onto YouTube.
Great, thank you, Graham. So,
Thank you, David. Very helpful.
you're welcome.
Very interesting.